All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Oregairu, Season 3, Episode 8. All right.
Last episode was the funniest episode in the series, and I don't think that's even that's not even a competition, really.
It has probably one of the funniest bits
Definitely.
in the show.
Yes.
With zero contest to it. Yes,
yeah.
that is 100% true.
Yeah. It's never would have expected a rap battle in a romantic dramedy.
Yeah, definitely not. And definitely not in Oregairu. As far as, how much of a snafu it is, that was not what I expected. I expected all of this,
Sure.
The hand gestures and such.
Definitely.
But not that.
Not that.
That was wonderful. So now here, Hayama Hayato. I'm going to talk to you.
Yes.
I'm going to try and recruit you. I'm going to try and reason with you. I think this could be a little bit more
complicated
than Hachiman initially thinks.
Potentially. Potentially.
Yeah. So y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion.
Okay.
Right.
I am a mess of emotions right now for various reasons.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am in a similar state, but I think it's less of an emotional one and more of a just astonished one. Because I really do feel like I had a read on a bunch of things going on in this episode, and yet I could not have guessed that this is what Yukino was going to say.
Yeah, because and the thing is, wow. So there's that bit of excitement from me because it's like, oh, grant Yui Gahama's wish, right? And I'm a Yui shipper, right? So right? But I love how they went about this because the whole distinction that basically Hachiman made of I'm not actually helping her if I'm opposing her, right?
Yeah, it's totally manipulation of the events and stuff to achieve a result that isn't really truly.
It's a technicality,
genuine.
right?
It's a technicality, absolutely.
Yes, and the thing is that you never know in situations like that whether the technicality is truly a technicality or if it actually will be able to be something different because the human heart is fickle, right? And you rarely understand yourself well enough in order to be able to make those kinds of hair-splitting distinctions.
And we were told, Hachiman was told when he was talking with Hayama. That's why I loved the conversation so much, was because I thought he was keeping that in balance there. Was he's like, this is the wrong way to do this. And he says, I know, but I'm doing it anyway. That's the moment where we realized that Hachiman knew there was a fairly good likelihood that something like this could happen. I'm sure he didn't know exactly that this was on the table. But Hayama basically said, you know this is not the right call here, right? Like in some ways, the debate, yes, absolutely. The debate in some ways that was very small and minor between him and Haruno, Hayama and Haruno, about the idea that they don't need to throw everything away. What they have can be altered little by little. Yeah. And yet, this is not that, and it is also not throwing it away.
Yes.
So Yukino is really in the Haruno camp in this regard.
Well, Yukino's making a very mature decision here because what she is basically realizing is that I got swept up in the moment. I fell back on old patterns that I was trying to break, right? And while there is a possibility of breaking them through these subtle, slow over time changes, she has realized that she is dissatisfied with that, right? Yeah. That her own weaknesses and Hachiman's weaknesses and Yui's weaknesses and things like that causes them to basically stick in the groove that they've been in, right? So
that's true.
So drastic action is necessary, right? And that's something that it totally makes sense that she would go to that realization because she is a very extreme person when it comes right down to it, when she's set on something.
Right.
So major props to her for doing this, and this is a way to basically say, regardless of whatever you decide, or Yui decides, or whoever, I am going to make my own decision. I am cutting my own ties of codependency, regardless of what you do.
Regardless of what you do. And that's the part that's that's painful. It's surprising. It's incredible. It's also it's actually kind of genius. Let me break this down in a way that I feel like it's a bit too casual to just say that it's genius, but not explain why I think it is. Because codependency is really insidious in actually a way that
keep going.
So you know how when you're living in shame, you tolerate and make kind of allowance for your shame. You say it's not that bad, and also then you use these weird arguments of like, but if I had zero shame, then what would I
don't want to be shameless.
Exactly. And yet shame is like the most toxic thing that we as human beings tolerate and make room for. Now, what they have, codependency, way less toxic in terms of the like scale of like, self-deception and all that stuff. So codependency is something that is tough to completely uproot, but it is something that you can very easily, trim. Like you can clip around it and be like, I'm keeping it in check. It's pretty good. But the idea that she was self-aware of the idea that when she made the decision to do this, she did so knowing that there was a very, very good possibility that he would do something to make it work. She never asked him.
Right.
She never specifically tried to push him in that direction. In fact, she tried, if anything, to not do that.
Right, to push him away from it. But
not even in a way that would make him go to do it.
Right.
That's the part where I feel like she looks at this as the... this is something I thought very much could happen, and look at me, I'm relieved.
Yeah,
like there's this part in her that I think she's crying because she's feeling that maybe
elation.
Slight bit of. Oh, yes, but I want, please let me finish here. The idea that she is relieved, yes, about the fact that this worked, but also potentially this feeling of not just necessarily guilt or shame, but something of where she's like, I knew this would happen. Deep down, she's aware that this was one of the scenarios that she saw with her foresight.
And it's contrasted with the whole thing that when it was brought up by Hachiman, there was that whole flirty, witty banter and stuff, and she was totally on board with it, right?
Because she was enraptured in the moment with him. Yeah.
The problem with codependency, the reason why it's insidious is because it stems from a good thing. And then it's just too much of that good thing, right? And then as a result of that, it turns into something that you would hope you wouldn't have to deal with, right? So
codependency, I don't think entirely really stems from a good thing. I think we should break down, because I know what you're talking about.
Okay, let's go into the details then of...
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm not trying to just disagree with you here, because I agree with you that it does stem from the desire to basically be there for another person.
Right.
It's the desire to support them. It's
from
what
that close connection.
Yeah, it's what Yui is doing without expecting anything in return, basically. That aspect of it is something that it's sacrificial. It's a sign of love sometimes, but the codependency aspect of it versus it just being dependency, like the idea that Hachiman very much depends on Yui in these situations to be like, hey, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to need to talk about some ideas. I need some help with like what this thing is. He doesn't ever specifically straight up like ask her like with like parameters and stuff. It's just kind of a bit assumed. It's
something where there's an imbalance in what ends up happening, right? There is something where people end up being so used to the help that they would not be able to get by without the help, right?
Sure.
It's the relationship where you need to actually spend some time apart in order to really work on you, so that way when you're together you can be fully together and have it be a positive thing all on its own.
Yeah.
And that's why I absolutely love what Yukino did here. And I want to clarify. Because y'all know that I'm a Yui shipper, right? So this is not coming from a place, I mean, you never know where your biases are, but I don't believe this is coming from a place of bias as far as, now we'll get to see, like, Yui will be the canon ending or anything Yui like that.
Route. Yeah,
Right, exactly. The reason why I think this is so amazing is because this is a way that Yukino will be able to basically say, I am making my own decision with regards to everything that's happening here, and it's wholly my decision, right? The issue with Yui's situation up till now, and even Hachiman's, is that it wasn't really their decision. It was a decision that was brought about by their environment and by the impulses and influences of the people around them, right? And that's one of the reasons why I felt this apprehension over the idea of Yukino being the end canon girl, because there was this part of Yui that was sort of like realizing that Yukino liked Hachiman, and as a result trying to push Hachiman towards Yukino.
Right.
But that wasn't happening in the reverse, right? So as a result of that, there was this part in my mind of, will they be able to truly sell me on the fact that this will be Hachiman's decision? Now, given the fact that this has happened, I don't think that Hachiman will actually end up with Yui, because this is still something where Yukino is pushing him towards Yui rather than him actually choosing Yui.
Right.
And
of course, that never works out.
No, it never works out. And my heart will break for Yui as she basically gets the sort of happy dream that can never be, right? But what it makes me really excited for is that then Hachiman will have to then choose for himself, right?
Or also, Yui might end up rejecting it because it's something that
she realizes she actually does want something genuine.
She does want something genuine. Yeah,
sure.
That's the part. That's the part that I'm really excited about. This.
That's the conversation with Haruno.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing of where, because they'll shift the environment so much to being one of where they're getting to spend time with each other, and there's no distractions, if you will.
Sure.
They'll realize that they both really don't want this. They actually prefer things, not exactly the way things were with the three of them, but they prefer things with the three of them. So the thing I wanted to finish up with the codependency angle was the idea of self-worth. One of the things that I would say a lot of people who have not really experienced the nastier sides of codependency don't understand is that there is an idea that when someone in a codependency relationship makes a decision, you are responsible for their decision.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really gross. It's this idea of owing them something. Or feeling like you have to do something to them or for them or with them because of some other predisposition.
Yeah, since the positive thing becomes the baseline, then if you take that away, that becomes a punishment.
Exactly.
And then it's,
It's an idea of where your thing about choice is the absolute fundamental aspect of it. But the reason why choice is robbed in a codependency relationship, I would say, is because the people involved don't actually have that much self-worth or actual strong core identity.
Maybe this is an extreme example that doesn't quite fit, because it's definitely
use extremes to make the point. That's a good. Then you can.
It's pretty set in stone that it makes sense that when you're a child, right, that your parents will pay for your food, right? That's just the thing. They're raising you, right? You would not be capable of
actually supply you of food, basically.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you would not be capable of feeding yourself, right?
Yeah, that would be child abuse if you did not feed your child.
Right. If all of a sudden they took away, they made it so that you had to find food on your own and you're 6 years old, that would be pretty fucked up, right?
Yeah. Either their situation is already pretty, fucked up in general, but yeah.
Yeah. So in a situation where you're adults, right, where you want to have a relationship of mutual understanding and peerage and balance and all that good stuff, if it gets to the point where you become dependent like a child, right, and it becomes that extreme, now that's an extreme example, right, but to the point where it would be that kind of destroying of the other person if you were to suddenly not do something that you shouldn't really be expected to do all the time.
It's almost like we're not responsible for fulfilling other people's needs.
Right. That's something where then it's like, okay, you have this potentially in a relationship that in many cases and instances was probably very positive, ended up being absolutely nasty and weakening to the other person because, now all of a sudden they can't take care of themselves in this particular area. Right. And while emotional needs might not be as seemingly obvious, as food or whatever, it's the same principle, right?
Because it's the exact same principle.
So
this is where I think a lot of people really compromise with regards to relationships is you're like, oh, I understand, like, that they're not going to, you know, like there's nothing bad about someone giving to another person.
Right.
But it's the expectation that those things are the norm that breeds really, really, really toxic relationships.
And you've heard us say the word insidious, but
Yes.
in case you don't know what that means, it's basically something that can sneak up on you,
Yeah.
right? It's
exactly.
it's not just like devious and like and can be really nasty, but it's
Right.
that you don't even see it coming, right?
Right.
And oh well, if I care about this person and all that stuff, I don't intend to do them any harm, right?
Yeah, of
you know,
course.
so that nothing bad should happen, right?
So the most important thing when you feel like there could be codependency that's growing is you just bring it out in the open and have a genuine conversation about it. And it's almost always easy to actually break it away with a little bit of action tied to the aftermath of the genuine conversation.
And the genuine conversation is something that is not happening within this trio because it's also tied to the whole love triangle.
It's tied to the whole love triangle, yeah.
Which makes it extra complicated. As a result of that, it hasn't been able to be properly dealt with.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm most excited to see, now that Hachiman is being pushed away by Yukino, is that then Hachiman and Yui have an honest conversation, because Hachiman and Yukino, I feel like they... even if they use misdirections and like you know, obfuscating language and things like that, they're both genuinely trying to communicate from the heart, right?
Yeah.
But
For the most part.
For the most part, right? Yeah. But with Hachiman and Yui, I feel like it's something where, because Yui hasn't necessarily felt safe communicating fully because of her insecurities and things like that, and the whole thing that's been her growth arc, right? There's been the obfuscating language on top of not actually trying to be emotionally vulnerable with each other. So it's
a whole
mess, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping is that as a result of this, even if it ends up being painful and we sort of get the bad end for Yui, is that they end up having that conversation, because that conversation needs to happen. And what I'm curious about is that as a result of this happening, will Yui start to realize, oh, what is it that I really want? Because the thing that I have professed up till now of wanting us all to stay together, that might not actually end up being able to happen as a result of what happened between Yukino and Hachiman.
For sure.
How do I feel about that?
Yeah. But oh my god. Okay, so going and recap this episode, really good stuff. We have a Hayama, Hayato, and Hikigaya, Hachiman,
conversation. And it's excellent.
And I gotta say, I love that their conversations have the most like punch to them, because you can really feel the genuineness coming out when they speak now.
Sure.
And you could definitely feel it being held back, as if both of them were in like moments where they would have their words caught in their throat, or maybe specifically
maybe in a bit of denial about what they were thinking or feeling.
Yeah, or maybe a little bit more about from Hayama's perspective. But the stuff that we've been getting from the two of these people when they're just in proximity to each other, it feels so powerful, because they starting to understand each other.
Yeah,
and
drinking in sync and all that.
Yeah. And yet you can definitely tell that they still have some realizations about each other that they will go through before the season is over.
Yeah.
And it'll be wonderful. So they have their little photo shoot.
Yep.
We get a nice little talk with Ebina.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about Ebina. It's like, oh, sweet.
Cool.
But then just the idea that, hey, this will work out for you because, you know, after all, you're different than from me.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't want me spoiling things.
Yeah. I'm liking the encouragement, but also the idea that Hachiman, it's not that he's got a lot of endurance, if that makes sense.
Okay, like socially, emotionally,
well,
mentally.
I don't know how to describe it with any of those individual things, but just the idea that he really does want the best possible ending for him and Yukino, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But in this moment here, he is a bit acting out the, I'm going to save her, I'm going to do this for her. But in some ways, this episode is everyone kind of warning him that the the L is coming.
Right. He's
and
kind
yet he's going to bounce back from it quite well. I think that's more I think what's the vibe I'm getting when I talk about endurance. The idea that he's gotten knocked down quite a few times. Then his personality has been warped sometimes by those points of getting knocked down over and over and over again. But look at how much he's changed now. The idea that he went through all that stuff and look at where he is.
Yeah.
That speaks of an endurance that I have to applaud. And I feel like Ebina might be the person who's not necessarily got as much of that.
All right.
Because I don't remember her season 2 conversation with Hachiman that well.
It was the whole thing of her wanting what's his face, sort of dumb boy to be shot down before he could ask, so that way it would maintain the friend dynamic and all that stuff of the group.
Yeah, she doesn't necessarily want anything super genuine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think what that does is that if she went through all that, there would be a lot of pain and suffering.
Right, and better to have the happy life.
Yeah, and she does not have the endurance to go through all that.
Sure.
And what I think Hachiman is saying is that he's just like, I'll go and enrage the bull. I'll go fight Yukino's mom. I'll go do all this stuff.
But what I find curious about this is that while it is very much an endurance thing, it's also an instance of Hachiman's stubbornness where he's refusing to learn. And then he had that rude awakening when he talked to Yukino, where all of a sudden it's like, oh.
Well, right, because he knew this wasn't the best choice there, but he was doing this for him. Like
that's true.
Like that's the point where I kind of still believe he was lying to Haruno here.
But was he lying to himself?
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference between deceiving for the purpose of kind of shadowing the truth with a pretty obvious lie, or being in self-deception. And there's this part here where I wanted to go over this because I'm still a little bit iffy on it here.
In the Haruno conversation?
The Haruno conversation, yeah, where he basically mentions what he's doing here. Oh, right. Yeah, I told you what 3 this is called, didn't I? Do you honestly think this is good for her? And then he says, I wouldn't say it has much to do with Yukino Shida, honestly, which I believe to be an actual just lie.
Yeah,
that's just he is consciously, I believe, obfuscating the truth here, but he is telling the truth in part that it is a choice that he's doing kind of for him. Now I want to know your thoughts on this.
Okay, yeah.
What percentage breakdown would you put this towards he's doing this for himself or he's doing this for Yukino?
Yeah, just on the Yukino side of things, it's obvious he's doing it for Yukino because he wouldn't really be doing this for anyone else.
Right. Like the request she made.
He kind of would, and he's shown that he does do things for other people, but not like this. Like this. This is a there's a lot of extra oomph and effort and everything and care that's going into this because it's Yukino.
For sure.
Now, is he also doing this for himself? I believe so. But to what degree?
To what degree? Yeah.
I feel like that it might be the thing where he can tell that there's that part of him that's doing it for himself, and he uses that as kind of like the justification for it.
Sure,
but it's not the lion's share.
Okay, because this is the part where I'm probably the most unsure about. Is I can just tell this is a lie.
Okay.
Like
to Haruno or to himself?
To Haruno, specifically.
Sure, okay.
And because literally later in the conversation...
He is trying to convince her here, so that does make sense.
It makes sense, yeah. But also the idea of her being like, oh, well, why are you taking this too far? Oh, it's too funny. At least laugh when you say something like that. You weave all kinds of lies just so you don't have to say what's true. And then he says... I don't believe there's any truth I particularly need to say.
Yeah.
And even if there was, you're not the person I would need to say it to.
That was such a lie.
Well, what I could very much sense with here was there was this little bit of, not animosity, but kind of frustration from Haruno's end, where she was basically saying, you're so funny. And what that is, by looking away, she's not condescending to him by being like, you're so funny. What she's kind of doing is like, oh, man.
It's like a bit exasperation.
It's exasperation.
And trying to really think through it.
Because she knows that this situation is complicated. It's a snafu.
Yeah.
But she is actually trying to help.
Yeah, it's the similar kind of thing of when she would interact with Yukino in the past, and probably the reason for that is because it's directly affecting Yukino, right? It revolves around that. So it's the whole thing of I'm frustrated because I see things going a way that I don't like and I don't think is good. So I'm going to try and do my surgeon needlework and stuff in order to fix this.
She is needling,
but at the same time, she really can't. She can't make
them do anything. Yep, exactly.
Right? She's trying to poke at them and make them see certain things the way that she wants them to see it.
Acknowledge that this here is dysfunctional and painful. And it's like, well, the pain is coming because you're poking a needle in my butt.
right, exactly, yeah.
And she's like, yes, but like, so I love Haruno as a character.
Yeah.
Absolutely love her. This is the kind of person, though, when they're doing this thing and it's so blatantly obvious, that I love that Hachiman responds in this way.
Yep.
Because it basically says, hold on, who's vicariously trying to weave their way into this? Who are you? We're approaching you.
Yeah.
And you're a tool. Sorry, we're just using you to get this whole thing with your mom. Of course this whole thing could fail. And she's like, I know it's going to fail.
Well, and this is
because I've seen this whole thing kind of thing play out with Hayama. So
this I think is the big flaw in Haruno. Is that she understands in her head, right?
Right.
But she doesn't fully understand in practice the difference between decisions that someone is convinced to make versus actually learning themselves.
Oh.
And that's what frustrates her. Probably
learning
because
comes through failure.
Exactly.
Sure.
And I'm guessing that the reason she's so frustrated by all of this is because she has gone through a similar process.
Well, she's watched it with Hayama. That was the reason why Hayama was in this episode.
Totally. Yeah. She's watched it, and I'm pretty sure she has probably gone through it.
Totally.
At some point, way in the past and whatnot. And as a result, that's something that is particularly for her. It bothers her, right?
And I think the reason why is because she likes Hachiman so much.
Sure, and she cares about her sister and all of these other things.
I think she is a very, very closet shipper of the two.
Not very closet, I would say.
Well, okay. When Yui is concerned, the fact of how much she just shuts down Yui in the beginning was the most disrespectful shit.
No, I know, and that's something that she's been doing over the entire course of the show.
Yeah,
and I teeter-tottered back and forth between being like, oh, this is great tension for the scene and everything, and just character conflict and stuff.
I fucking hate you, Haruno.
And not just hating Haruno, but kind of hating the show for doing it.
Because it hurts you a lot?
Because, not because it hurts me a lot, but it felt like then, how are we actually going to get to the point where it becomes the genuine level playing field decision for the characters of what's going to happen?
Well, ultimately here we see that the characters are strong enough that they don't need to...
I was still going.
Okay.
And that's something that, I've come to understand and all that stuff over the course of the show. I don't have a big issue with it now, right? But, when you're in the moment and all of that stuff, it's like,
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why I loved so much the conversation between Yui and Haruno when Yui comes back. Because Haruno is the person with experience, right? And she's saying, this is what the situation is, right? Yeah. This is a problem, et cetera, et cetera. I have more experience than you. This is what you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And Yui has that kind of rebelliousness of youth, right? Where it's hey, you don't
know us.
Yeah, you don't know us. And you know what? You might be right, but you might not. And I'm not going to let you basically just decide for me. I'm going to decide for myself. But at the same time, Yui is realizing that there is a problem, right? She's wanting to learn, but at the same time, she's not going to take things without questioning them, right? Yeah. And that's why she comes here, right? And she's like, hey,
I acknowledge that you have perspective.
Yeah. Even though you're, and she's going to Haruno, even though Haruno has been all sorts of rude to her over the course of the series, right? Totally ignores her and things like that, but she's still like, hey, I know that I probably have something that I could stand to learn from you, but I'm wrestling with it on the inside because I don't know how to reconcile it with these other things that I hold true. Right?
So one of the things that I've loved about Haruno, and I felt like there was this little aspect of her in the beginning, and then I kind of abandoned it because I felt like the character was deeper in certain areas, and thus I threw out entirely the first impression. But I think sometimes my first impressions on characters are almost perfect. It's just that they're too simple.
Okay.
I sensed narcissism from Haruno in the beginning.
Okay.
Now, the reason for that was the body language and the way she kind of pushed her way into things there.
She deigns herself a surgeon. That's pretty arrogant.
Exactly. But the thing that I kind of threw away when I was like, oh, she's actually way more complicated than that, is that no, that's still there. Mm-hmm. But I think the part that I just realized is rather fascinating in a theory kind of area. It's not necessarily this case here, but I thought for the longest time that she saw herself in Hachiman. And I still think she does.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. And I think that's why she likes him so much.
Getting involved in other people's situations.
Right,
and all
because
that.
it's a playful way to be like, ooh, I remember my past self being kind of like you. Ooh, I'm going to weave you into something that will be something or force to be reckoned with. And yet Hachiman continually surprises her in the ways in which he changes and evolves and grows in different ways. And I think she just kind of goes, oh, you just
keeps
make
her on her
things
toes.
happen.
Yeah,
you're so exciting. But Yui, I wonder if Yui is the picture of how she actually was in some ways.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Yui was the one that, well, no, see, that doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. Every time I think about this, because I always try to wonder, whenever someone who is a bit full of themselves really dislikes a specific person.
Why?
The reason why usually is because there's just something about them that they antagonize them for like a direct angle. It's like they accosted me in some way. But there's a possibility
when they didn't actually ever do anything to you.
They didn't actually do anything, but it's the idea of maybe there's a part of Yui that really bugs her to look at. It's like looking into a mirror, but your slight bits of narcissism don't get fed in this way.
Exactly.
So, and I don't think I have any really hard ground to stand on, but I just wanted to say it to see how you reacted to it.
So I like that. I like that because the counterpoint I would say for that is that the biggest explanation I could give for why Haruno treats Yui the way that she does, other than specifically to sabotage the relationship with Hachiman so that way Hachiman ends up going for Yukino, because I really feel like that's something that she is actively keeping in her mind of like it feels very kind of Louis from Beastars of like put the other person down and and things like that so that way they are so that they get in line, they fall into line. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But at the same time, most of the time when I think of someone who is very egotistical, if there's someone that they don't like, they don't actually dislike them. At most, it goes to ambivalence, where they just don't care. And in a way, that kind of seems to fit for Yui. She just doesn't acknowledge her existence, right? It's just, you're invisible, you're not a person, you're not here, etc. Right?
Yeah. That's why this conversation is so good, because they're forced to talk to each other one-on-one. Yeah.
Right, and Hachiman's not around in it and everything, so there's no pretense that she really has to hold up, right? Yeah. It's an honest to goodness conversation, right? And when that happens, it almost seems like she's gaining a bit more respect for Yui, or at least letting that show that she wouldn't normally, right? The whole thing of you really do have it probably the worst, or you're the one that's actually being mature here, right? It's like, that is different, right? And given that makes me think that any you don't exist syndrome, right, is actually actively feigned as opposed to just a lack of interest, desire, etc.
The simpler theory for why she is like this to Yui is that Yui is the least genuine of the three. And that's the thing that makes sense a little bit within the context of the reason why this was cut in between the Hayama conversation is she then says, I only want to see what's genuine. And then we see the behind the scenes thing, the non-Hachiman perspective of these two talking at the table.
Sure.
And then when it ends, she asks Yui, do you think that's genuine?
Oh, okay.
And she's like, well,
it hurts so much. Yeah.
I know it's not. I don't know about that, but I know it's not codependency since it hurts so much. And then Hayama's like, well, I think there's a possibility, and she's like, nope, impossible.
Yeah,
you know
okay.
that from experience.
So all right. So here's my take on it. Maybe then,
Mm-hmm.
in this conversation, Haruno finds that newfound respect for Yui because she sees that Yui is actively wrestling with it, as opposed to just accepting the I don't want something genuine.
For sure.
And then on top of that, maybe the thing from before would be that Yui had of the three of them, Yui had the least tie to Yukino of all of them. Yukino is Yukino, right? So of course Haruno cares and will be very involved there. Hachiman is the at the very least the one male friend that Yukino has. So if something were to happen there, that is a big deal for Yukino as far as, just meeting people and all of that stuff, right? Getting socially involved and all that. And then with Yui, it's just you're the friend, which is still important maybe, but you're not necessarily going to be like having a big influence on Yukino. So I don't necessarily need to deal with you.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden here, it's okay, maybe I wrote you off too soon, kind of. All right, well, you're wrestling with this.
And
okay.
hey, if this is Yui's moment to basically have all the chips go in her side of the table for at least a few rounds, where she has all the buying power, I'm really excited to see what kind of conversations that forces, because in a lot of ways, I think some of them will be genuine.
Right.
And I think those are ones that will be scary and painful.
Yes.
But I think that if Hachiman and Yui are able to cry in each other's arms at least once before this series is over, it'll have all been worth it.
Yeah. And that is... that's the big thing, isn't it, though? Because the whole thing of how much of what will happen from now on will be genuine, that's the big question. And I think there's a possibility for that to happen, but that is absolutely not the default. And that's why what I'm hoping will happen is that Yui will realize that she wants something genuine. So when she realizes, I'm getting the lie that I wanted before, but it is a lie, she won't hold for it, right? And then she'll basically, have that conversation with Hachiman that's open and honest and everything, and then they can figure out what they're going to do. But,
I am impressed that the story went this direction, and that this kind of a thing happened in episode 8, when we've still got like
4 or 5 more episodes
left. So I am really excited for what happens next.
Yes.
I will say, the image though in my mind of them literally like being in each other's arms and one or both of them are crying, I really like that. There's been times where I've seen, or I've been in situations where people finally say the thing that's been on their mind for so long. And it's the idea that it's not really about the response of the person anymore. It's just them being willing to say it.
It's them allowing the tears to not stop.
Exactly. Allowing the tears to not stop. You read my mind, dude. That's literally the thing I was about to bring up.
That is, I would say, why there is precedent and demand, basically, within the show's structure and everything, for something like that to happen.
And if this show wanted to end me, like freaking end me, we're gonna have all 3 of them holding each other and crying, and having this full, just free moment of letting it all out.
Because Yukino and Hachiman wasn't the only thing that potentially ended this episode. It was also the thing that Yui wanted, of all 3 of them to stay together. Right.
That's the terrifying.
That's the terrifying thing, and that's where, again, this is a snafu, right? This is going to have a conclusion, and hopefully it's a happy one, but we got to conclude all the different fronts, because there's a lot of them. There is a lot of them.
And I like that this is basically from the writing perspective, this is basically going back with Yukino and digging up all the way to the beginning, to the fact that her dysfunction at being unable to make relationships led her to basically accepting any semi-decent relationship as healthy, because she hadn't had a lot of experience with all this stuff before. And she brings that stuff up, which is so good and so self-aware of her, to be like, hey, just because I didn't have any good relationships really prior to you doesn't mean that I'm going to accept what we have here just because it's above nominal.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Let's go back to that season 1 Yui. Yeah.
I'm gonna put the afu in this here, and like put and dig all this here, so that we can build something new and in the foundation of whatever this muddied ground is. So I'm really, really excited to see what Hiratsuka and freaking Hachiman talk about over ramen.
Oh man, that is going to be awesome.
God.
That is going to be awesome.
God. Also, let's just go out in a Hachiman just love train here a bit here, because oh my God, he handled Yukino's mom like a champ.
Good. Yeah,
like
the whole thing of bringing up the
car accident.
Holy shit! And
I just had this moment of like, wait. He's no, is he really? And the fact that it was so subtle. The fact that because Hiratsuka is there, he has to be very careful that he doesn't make this a threat in a obvious way.
Right.
The bit of him being like, I can't wait to dance at prom. That was all he needed. She's just like, shit, well played.
Yeah.
Because Hiratsuka was looking at him with the thing of like, if you go here, this becomes legal, and this gets into some weird area where
I'm not sure if she even knew about it.
No. I think she's very much aware.
Yeah.
But she's kind of giving this look of like I'm an adult here.
Yeah.
I have to take care of me and do this part all well. So you very careful.
Let's
here,
not do
Hachiman.
extortion, please.
Let's not do any kind of shit that I have to be accountable for. And I like, if you look at Hiratsuka throughout this scene where she's actually in frame, because she's not. She's almost never in frame. But there's this little bit here where I'm quite going to ask your name, and he kind of has this and Hiratsuka, like right here, has this like look. She's like, she clued in immediately.
Yeah.
Like, she's so freaking smart. I love Hiratsuka so much. Right there, she goes, and then like, oh no, I know where this is going. And then Hachiman just gets giddy at the power.
Hachiman, yeah.
And then she just
And I gotta say,
and I love that she remembers.
Oh, of course she does.
To the point that, like, she's this competent businesswoman, right?
Right.
But I could very much see her having a thing of where it's like, I didn't handle that situation as directly. There was other people that were involved.
And it was a potentially nasty situation given our reputation and things like that. And
right, but it was also years ago.
Sure.
But she remembers it after just hearing his name. She's like, oh. And that means, and instead of it being a thing of where he immediately goes,
kills with kindness,
and puts any kind of, subtle double meaning thing, right? He just goes, I apologize for all the trouble I caused back then. And she's like, no, I should be apologizing. And they're very much,
right?
Yeah. And she asks him the question of, are you going to make this a big deal?
Right. Yeah.
And he says what on first glance is basically just the, oh, no, it's healed completely. It feels even sturdier than it did before. That right there is fine. Look at Hiratsuka throughout this bit here. Look at her. Feels even sturdier than it did before.
Like stern face.
No. Look. She breathed a sigh of relief. She immediately went into like,
okay.
Oh my God. But then he keeps going. I should raise newfound strength by dancing at the prom. And immediately, mind your manners, which I interpret as the thing of like, yes. Be respectful here. She's an adult here, but also like she's hierarchy.
She's
here.
High society, yeah.
Right. Hierarchy in general. But I think Hiratsuka is also like, shut the fuck up! Like, don't you dare make this into any kind of like dirty, like manipulative play here.
Like if this was like White Christmas or something, it's the whole thing where what's his name, Danny Kaye, just sort of rubs his arm, when he needs to convince what's his face to do something. It's
my God, what a deep cut.
No, I know, yeah.
Like 3 people watching.
Yeah,
like,
I know. I understood that reference. Yeah.
But I love that she still interprets it as, you're remarkably intrepid. Narrows her eyes, brings up the fan.
So
putting an object in between him and her, that is a defensive posture.
Oh yeah.
That is I'm potentially going to scheme here posture.
But
she concedes and he wins.
What I'm curious about is what was the expression on her face at the point when the fan was covering her face? Because she was smiling beforehand. Now,
there could have been contempt and all kinds of disgust.
There could have been all kinds of things.
That.
And yet.
You think she was impressed?
Oh, I think she was soups impressed.
Oh, that's why she's like, well, I need to see you again sometime.
Right.
He's like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good.
Here's why. I'm guessing that she has, well, at the very least, she knows of, she's interacted with him before, right? She's interacted with Hachiman before, separate from the accident, right? Separate from actually knowing his name and things like that.
Wait.
And I'm sure she is aware that there is potentially something between him and Yukino.
No.
She would absolutely never, ever be okay with that because he's a nobody, right? He's low class, right? He's not high society. He would have no place in their family.
But you think because of this conversation that she's just like, okay, now that was a business move, right?
Right. She's like, I can respect this kid and his ability to basically negotiate and play dirty in our circles, while at the same time, with the facade of kindness and everything, right? And it was a little rough around the edges. The whole thing of the dancing at prom was a bit, that was a bit. He
didn't have to be so
overt.
kinetic,
Right, exactly. But
yeah,
well played.
But yeah, well played. And
you might be able to take care of my daughter, kind of a thing, right?
I really don't think that she knows that there's an attraction thing between the two of them.
I think she does.
But if she does know, then I think that Haruno is not doing a good job at that Haruno has failed in
potentially
some measure. Because I think Haruno is very, very much trying
counterintelligence,
is trying to obfuscate any shenanigans between these two.
This is the reason why I think it's the case, though.
Okay.
Yes, the PTA ended up becoming its own problem, basically, right?
Okay.
But
yeah.
Yukino's mom was the big instigator in things. And the real reason why she didn't like it was because it was something that Yukino was doing, right? And also that she really, I'm guessing, doesn't really like the whole thing that Yukino's doing with the service club. I get the feeling she really doesn't like that.
Okay.
That was something that was, that was the biggest connection point that Yukino had with Hachiman, right?
Okay.
And which came first, the chicken or the egg, that made it so that Yukino's mom didn't like the service club and all that stuff? Who can say? But I think it's connected to the whole fact that it's a way in which Yukino is interacting and making friends with people that do not fit in their sphere of society. And yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I see potential there.
But Hachiman impressed her here, so yeah.
And here we are. We have a nice little end bit with Yui and Yukino, and Yui's aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And more so to the fact that, well, part of her wish was to have all three of them, be together.
She might not get that.
So Yukino fulfilling Yui's wish. It's not just one aspect.
That's true.
There's multiple things to here. So
yeah.
I want the ultimate Avengers assemble. Let's get everyone's wish fulfilled. Happiest of happy endings.
Yeah.
But, maybe
but right now it's a snafu.
maybe not for Yukino's mom.
No.
Yeah. But y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access. You can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
next time.